Good evening. The Madison County Board of Education work session, special session for Thursday, September 5th is now in session. Mr. Byrd, would you lead us in our invocation, please?
Yes, sir, with pleasure. We bow our heads in prayer, please. Dear Heavenly Father, look over us as we make decisions for children. And please pray for children throughout the world, especially the children in Georgia who had a horrific event, children in the United Kingdom who last week had a horrific event, and children in Germany who also had a horrific event with violence inflicted by their own citizens. And as we consider our children's future here in this board, let's also pray for our board member's children, Brian Brooks, who's in the hospital and recovering from a sickness, and keep him in your prayers as we do all children who are ill. Your Lord, in your name we pray. Amen.
Amen. First agenda item, MCSS recognitions. Mr. Cubic.
Thank you, Mr. Jones. These are the best parts of our board meetings. We get a lot of business done, but when we get opportunities to celebrate our students and our staff members, it's a special part of the board meeting. And so with that, I'm going to turn it over to our athletic administrator for the district, Mr. Matt Rogers.
Good evening. Again, I'm Matt Rogers, District Athletic Administrator. We're here tonight to recognize last year's 7A State Shot Put Champion, Miss Charity Collier, who is from Spartan High School. She's been part of the track program at Spartan High School since she was an 8th grader at Spartan Middle. Since then, she's qualified for the state meet each year. As a freshman, she finished 3rd in the discus at the HSA state meet. Last year, as a sophomore, Charity placed 2nd in the shot put at the HSA indoor state meet in Birmingham. Later that year, she broke the school record and placed 2nd in the shot put at the Meet of Champions in Mobile. Charity wrapped up her outdoor season at the HSA state tournament, state meet, as the champion in the shot put with a throw of 40 feet 5 inches. She also finished runner-up in discus with a throw of 121 feet and 10 inches. Charity will enter her junior year this year, ranked 1st in both events. I'd also like to mention that Charity was a state champion as a member of the Spartan girls wrestling program. Correct. So this is their 2nd state championship. I also want to recognize Coach Jeff McNeely, who, since he's been at Spartan, it seems like every year we're recognizing an individual or a team champion. Of course, Roger Perkins, the brother of Coach, who's been working with Charity. Again, congratulations to Charity College.
Mr. Driver, coaches, you want to come up? We'll get a picture with Mr. Byrd Jones. Miss Bays.
All right, next agenda item is informational items. Mr. Cubic.
Yes, sir. So our first informational item is in reference to naming the McKee Road Intermediate School. I sent y'all an email earlier outlining the 3 names that Mr. Jones facilitated a committee, and the committee got together and they came up with 3 names for the McKee Road School project. In alphabetical order, they were Harton Oaks, and Spartman. So it'd be, that'd be in front of intermediate school. So the policy says We bring those 3 recommendations to the board for any kind of discussion, and then we narrow it down to one, and we'll bring that one back for you for a vote next board meeting, which is next Thursday. So with that, I'll turn it over to Mr. Jones, and who facilitated the committee.
Yeah, yeah, just so briefly, just to update the board and the public on what transpired with the committee. So Mr. Kubik had me get a committee together, and we had a representative from Madison Crossroads, Harvest Elementary, and Spartan Middle School. We met once in person, but we did correspond quite a few times via email. Representative Andy Witt was also on that committee. However, he wasn't able to attend in person, but he did correspond in emails. But so we were just, the committee came together, and we were trying to find a unique way to highlight both of the communities that's going to be fed into that school. And Harton, for those that do not know where that, it's unique just because it's the Harton is for Harvest and Tony combined together. But Sparkman also has that unique, feature in that community because we have Sparkman Middle School and Sparkman High School. So, I think that, I'd be interested to see what the other board members that have a little bit more experience than I do with naming facilities has to say about it.
I can tell you this, that Mr. Brooks was not here tonight, and he sent an email to all the board members indicating that he liked the choice of Sparkman, just so that I can go on record for what he sent to us. So I'll start it there.
Yeah, I'm a fan of hot there. I'm a fan of names that have some kind of significance, whether it be historic. So, although I do like Harton, I like the combination of Harvest and Tony. I asked like what long-term significance will that have, or will that be a name going forward in that general community? It's not. It sounds it's easy to roll off the tongue. I like it. Also like Sparkman too. Sparkman is contiguous. We know Sparkman. It is part of that feeder pattern. It makes sense. That will be 4 schools names, four Sparkman schools.
Mm-hmm.
Sparkman Middle, Sparkman 9th grade, Sparkman High. That does seem like a little much. I know you all were mentioning it earlier that there was a Tony school at some point over in that area.
There was.
That was at the time it was a segregated school, pre-integration. I know it's not in Tony technically though. The new school won't be in Tony. It's in Harvest, correct?
Harvest address, yes.
Okay. So I like the names. I think there may be some more we could add to it possibly, and maybe to pay some respect to that school, the Tony school.
Right.
That came, maybe a Sparkman / something to consider.
It does have, to your point, Mr. Curry, it has a Harvest postal box. But when you look at the closest proximity, the closest community is in fact Tony. It's Tony, then Madison Crossroads, then Harvest. But because of, as we all are aware, your address is wherever your post box is. So
Yeah, it's unique to where it's at because it's got a Harvest postal, but it's covered by, as far as fire service, it's covered by Tony. So, yeah.
I think my observation goes that names are important, but names do not reflect the good work that will go in that school off McKee Road. And that good work will come with the education of all those children from all the communities in that area. So I don't want anybody to get wrapped around the axle about this name or that name. The names are important, and but the real thing is going to be that good education that's going to occur there.
Ms. Bates, do you have anything to add?
I agree with Mr. Curry. I think, I'm assuming based on, you know, your history and the people who were involved in that committee, that a lot of thought went into those names. And I think there is a great deal of value in a community coming together and deciding what they feel is representative name-wise. I still recall when we did Moore's Mill and the amount of passion. I mean, people actually came to the board and broke into tears at that podium over that, because that's their community, and I think there's a lot of importance in allowing the people that are going to experience that to have input into that name. And as long as it's not clearly inappropriate, I would be in agreement with whatever that community prefers.
Well, I will add that, you know, we had a committee together that worked on this, but I can assure you I've received quite a few emails and phone calls about the names. So there is interest there from the community, so I just want to make sure we're making the right decision going forward.
So just for clarity, the names that were listed, is it in order of, like a rank order, or is it just these are the three names, Hardin, Oaks, and Sparkman?
So they were alphabetical.
I put them alphabetical.
But there's no
That
ranks.
would be a question for Mr. Jones. I just put them alphabetically.
Yeah, Mr. Cubic, his email is alphabetically. The committee voted for Hardin Oaks. That was their number one, and then Sparkman. Are there any other comments from the board? Mr. Cubic, do we need to make a decision for the name tonight, or?
I'll defer to,
It's not on the agenda to vote
Right.
on tonight.
Right.
so-
no, it was just informational item
Yeah.
for the board tonight, and then we'll bring it back next week.
On September 12th.
And if I remember correctly, we came with 3 names for Moore's Mill, and actually, Mr. West might remember better than I
I
do.
think the committee's supposed to submit up to 3 names, is
Yeah.
what your policy says.
And I don't think we ended up with the first 3. I think we went back a couple times and then ended up with Moore's Mill, so it would not be uncommon to go back and forth a little bit on that.
Okay, that's good to know.
Mr. Jones, you said that some of your community members have reached out to you. Has there been, is there anything that will help us with this decision from people, your constituents who have reached out? Is there anything that you can share that would help that?
Well, we did try and find a prominent family name, in that area, but we just never could, come in agreement to which one. So I did bring up a few things about it in our committee meeting, but a lot of the phone calls that I've received is just inquiring about, what the name's going to be. I did ask, for suggestions, but I really haven't received that much feedback from people outside the committee and just a few select folks within the community.
Okay.
I will say that during the naming of Moore's Mill, I think we purposely, as a board, chose to move away from names because they become very
Contentious.
subjectively passionate about certain things, and street assignment, Moore's Mill,
Right.
towns, existing names do not tend to drum up quite as much
Controversy.
intensity.
Yeah. So-
Because for everybody that loves somebody, there's probably somebody
Yeah,
that
because
doesn't.
there's a lot of good quality families within that area, and how can we choose? It'd be a difficult task for us to choose this family over the other.
For sure, and family names, I would say would be something that would be very contentious.
Yep.
Mr. Creed, could you elaborate a little bit on the Tony School that you spoke about?
Yeah, I was just prior to the board meeting, I was talking to Mr. Jones, and we talked about there was and I didn't know this, but there was a school not far from where McKee Road is.
McKee Road in Waltrana
Okay.
is where it's located.
There was a pre-integration school, Tony School. And so, I could consider that, possibly pay some respect to that school. I don't know, it wasn't a Madison County school, I would presume, it was its own.
Tony School was,
Madison County School?
yeah, my mother taught there.
Okay.
She taught art there in Marienville. We used to have an elementary school in Marienville. And she flipped between Marienville and Tony. 2 days
I
in
had
one.
not heard of this. I mean, Farmers Capital and some of
What was
those
your
I've
mom's
heard
name?
about, but I hadn't heard about Tony.
Yeah, I didn't know that until Mr. Jones brought it up. I said, well, that's a history.
The gymnasium still stands
Really?
at that location, so.
But, you know, if you name a school for one of two communities, will the other communities' feelings be hurt?
Right.
So, I mean, no, because the two big communities, Mr. Jones' district, are Harvest and Tony.
Harvest and
We
Madison
have
Crossroads.
we have a Harvest Elementary School.
And we have a Madison Crossroads, so this would be a combination of the two for the other community that serve, I mean, you know, just for talking about it.
It'd be a good, I like the names as presented, I'll say that. The names as presented, thank you all to the committee who took the time and energy to Hart Oaks and Spartan. Those are quality names. Because Ms. Bates, I wasn't on the board, when I was employed when Moore's Mill was built, but there was multiple iterations, if I recall, in that process. You know, if there's an opportunity to review, maybe another round, maybe some new considerations, but I like the names as presented.
Yeah, I'm not opposed to that. I mean, if we have additional names, you know, I don't have an issue with that.
We could, and we could put it on for, the first meeting in October and give you time to go back if you want, you know, if
Okay.
you'd like that, you know, I'm good with that. We just want to go ahead and get it named so that we can start moving forward with everything with the state and with the, the building plan and all. But if we could shoot for, because we have, the next meeting is going to be out at, the next meeting is here, which is next Thursday. Then we have the first meeting in October, which will be at Buckhorn Middle School. No, second one is at Buckhorn Middle School.
I was about to say,
Yeah, sorry about the 22nd. Sorry about that, Ms. Bates, didn't mean to. Right, but the second meeting, the first meeting in October will be here, and then we can bring it back at that time. That will give you a chance if you'd like to, and it'll give us a little bit more time to digest it and then go from there, if that's all right with you, sir.
That'd be great to me.
Y'all okay with that?
Yes.
Okay. All right, let's do that, then we'll bring it back in first meeting in October.
Okay. Next item, Mr. Cubic, informational item?
In Mr. Brooks's, and you may have saw it in his email, he was asked by the Gurley Volunteer Fire Department about what the possibilities would be for us to give them some land to put a fire station at the back of Madison County Elementary School. One of the issues they have is their railroad track separates the town of Gurley. And if there is a train derailment or something like that, there's no way for them to get around without going outside and trying to get around. So what they had reached Mr. Brooks about was the possibility of putting a single fire engine and a bathroom, and fully funded by the volunteer fire department, no cost to the board. But to have that, so they would have they'd have a fire truck on the other side of the railroad tracks. So if it was needed, they would have access to another fire truck. And so they were wondering what, you know, the board thought about the possibility of just, and I don't even think it was selling the land, just giving the land for them to put the building in the building. It's still our land and all, but just we'd have a fire truck right there on campus. And they would have access to the backside of the railroad tracks for the town of Gurley. And so that's what they wanted. And he was gonna bring that up, and, so I wanted to just mention that to you, so just get your thoughts about that a little bit, if that's something the board is interested in looking at.
Is it over kind of currently with the buses parked back that way?
That's what Mr. Brooks said, he said it was on the backside of, it wouldn't interfere with the school at all. It'd be on the backside, back by the practice fields, out that way.
Yeah, I know exactly, I think that's a great idea.
we've done it several times already, and it's always turned out well.
Yeah,
Right.
that's
Yeah,
great.
it's a long-term lease.
Yeah, is that what it'd be?
Format, yeah.
Okay.
You've done it at several campuses. There's one at Riverton and
I don't know what kind of silly.
I was trying to think of where else there are too, but yeah, we have several of them. So, but that's what, he wanted to bring that up, and so they reached out to him, and again, absolutely no cost to the board, other than a long-term lease for them to have the land to do it on, so.
So which school is it?
Madison County Elementary School in Gurley.
Okay.
Now, would we need to do a resolution for that
You'd
agreement
actually,
or
we'd
emoji?
actually do a lease agreement, and the
Okay.
board would approve the lease agreement once it's finished.
Okay.
Okay,
On a similar topic, I didn't get what you mentioned here, because I did get with Cindy. Mr. Brandon reached out to me, Tom Brandon, about some property that we supposedly own where the old Meridianville Elementary School was, it's still county property.
Where the Lions Club is.
And Cindy was going to look into that, the county commission was looking at the opportunity to use that, or possibly, want to expand and do some other things on those grounds that are commission property, but that's county school property, so, I don't know if you knew, we still had
I
property
didn't-
over there in that area.
it's a what? Oh, okay. Behind
Well,
The house up there?
my guess is one of the deeds didn't get transferred when Meridianville School was closed
Mhm.
back in the seventies. The school system lost title to that property because there was a reversionary clause in the deeds. And so, then the family turned around and donated it to the county commission, and that's how it became a ballpark. So, apparently there must have been this other parcel. We've looked for it, we haven't found it yet, but we'll locate it. And then y'all can figure out what you wanna do with it.
Okay, so we really don't know what our legal
Well,
ownership
it
rights
sounds
are or
like
not.
the deed that piece of property, I'm assuming you must have bought from somebody else sometime prior to losing the
Okay.
larger parcel. That's my guess.
Okay,
So, we're trying to find it, but there's a lot of parcels with your name on it. So
Well, thanks
far
for
we
bringing
haven't
that up.
identified it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
He reached out to me, and I said, well, look, I'll get with Ms. Cutie, and I'll get
Yeah.
with Ms. Thompson, and
Yeah.
just make them aware
Yeah.
of what.
we'll find out what
We're
our,
looking into it and see what it is and where it is.
Okay.
and what you need to do to take care of it.
all right, the only other information I had that I wanted to ask you guys about was, we talked about putting memorial plaques on different capital projects. And they're running, Mr. Brooks has found them for, depending on the size, for, 4,500 plus shipping on Mr. Cusor is around that same price. We're somewhere between 5 and 7, depending on size. It also goes on, how many letters are on there, all those different things weigh in on how much the cost of a plaque is, and then the mounting of the plaque. So, looking at our capital plan, as Mr. Jones and I were talking about earlier, if we get too low of a figure, we're basically putting plaques on everything. And so, we have new lights at Sparkman Middle Schools for the softball field, okay, plaque goes up, So having a reasonable amount of money that sets what the capital plan's value was before we start looking at putting plaques on there. Yeah, exactly. So, when I sent you the email, I just randomly started with $500,000 to $750,000, $1 million or greater. So what we're trying to do is, you're talking about roughly $5,000 to $7,000 per plaque mounted, and everything done. So I wanted to get your input as to what monetary value you think the capital improvement would need to be at in order for us to invest in putting a memorial plaque on there. Mr. Brooks, he responded, and I think he included y'all in there. He said that he was good at $750,000, so 750,000 and up. So and I'm just telling you what he shared with me, so we can have the conversation. And I don't know if it's greater than that or what, but I wanted to get your input about what you guys think the capital project should be.
I like $1 million. The reason why I like $1 million is because as the cost goes up to do everything, then you're talking about a wing, not a ball, size of a ball field. You're talking not one or two buildings. I like $1 million. That you would do something significant for $1 million.
Yeah, and looking at the capital plan, there's a lot of different projects that if we were to do the $500,000, like Mr. Cubic said, we'd be putting a plaque on pretty much every project we have. So,
Mr. Burke, I don't know why, I don't have as eloquent a reason, it just seemed like it was actually, something. Get you out of 100,000s and tops that.
And I had no purpose, I just randomly threw out, starting at a half and went up, because I figured you guys would have insight as to what you thought, so there wasn't.
I mean, $1 million sounds reasonable. I guess less about the dollar amount, I guess, would be the significance of what we're doing. So I don't know how you, the dollar amount on that, if it's communities, if it's for the public good, or, how you can define that. It may be under $1 million, but it's significant community investment or something that would be significant for the community. You might want to plan on that.
Okay.
So I don't know if it's a dollar amount or if it's if we could define a significant infrastructure. It may end up being above $1 million. It may actually be $3 million, but not significant enough to put, you know what I mean? So
Right.
like maybe a structure around significance to school and to the public good. But if we didn't want to define that, $1 million seems reasonable.
So what you're saying is have possibly a threshold for the dollar amount, but also having a practical reason for why that is, why it justifies as a separate factor.
They're basically already intertwined, but I mean, I don't have a problem with that being a consideration. I can't see us spending $1 million or more on a capital project without it impacting that community and that school.
I guess I could see something being under $1 million that would be significant enough that would warrant a plaque. I mean, over, I think there's no issue.
Okay.
But maybe under in a window that may actually be significant to the school and to the community at large, that may warrant a plaque. But so maybe $1 million, but then maybe a caveat in there, significant school or public good. If it's under that, it has to meet some criteria.
Okay, so have a threshold and then have, if it's less than that, the rationale for why we're doing that. Because we have built some things and our most recent is, what are roofing projects going?
Building and roofing projects to define, so the definition.
See, that's what's a roofing project, I would put a plaque on.
May leak,
But we're doing like $1.25 million on roofing projects,
I would not do.
so does it have to be a building?
I think anything doesn't require a plaque. But if
But that's a good point, Dr. Minsky. It's over $1 million and it's,
or we could do it this way. We could do $1 million or is otherwise approved by the board at the time. So if there's an extenuating circumstance that you indicate that you foresee, then let the board at the time grant the exemption and keep moving.
okay, so,
So would you specify $1 million less items of maintenance type items? Like, so you wouldn't do roofs and HVACs? I mean, y'all don't
Right.
currently put plaques on
no,
no.
this is
roofs and
new,
HVACs.
new building,
This
or
is-
Yeah.
new projects.
I think we're looking at $1 million or more in a new construction.
New construction
Okay,
projects.
new
And
the last one left, I think we should add.
Well, and I'll give you a perfect example. What we currently have, we're building the future, the old McKee Road School that's yet to be named. That school obviously will. The wing at Hazel Green High School obviously will. The most recent capital project that we've done was the corridor that connected New Hope High School to the New Hope Gymnasium, which was a safety issue. So that was a project, Dr. Minsky, do you know what it came in at? Eight something? The corridor at New Hope, was it eight?
Yes,
Was it 800 or was it more than that?
850.
Eight fifty?
It was
So-
not $1 million.
Right, so it wasn't $1 million, but is that significant enough because we're talking about safety and connecting of a part of New Hope? And so something like that you'd bring to the board and let y'all,
the board at the time, whomever it may be.
Right.
okay,
Because it's significant enough
Okay. All right. All right, thank you all for that. That's what we needed as far as informational items. I don't know if you have anything, Mr. Jones, or the other board members do.
No, I'm good with the $1 million threshold. So, and I agree with Mr. Curry and Mr. Byrd on their opinions as well, so. Now, do we need to, since we're gonna set it at that $1 million threshold, does the board need to approve the New Hope project for a plaque?
No, what I'll do is, this was for informational items, and then what we'll do is, since you guys have said basically $1 million, you're pretty good with for new construction. If it's under that, it needs to come to the board for an individual discussion as a case-by-case basis. So that way we'll see, Mr. Brooks, since it's in his district for New Hope, if he wants to bring it to the board as a plaque and the rationale for why, and then we can approach it that way. And then that way so basically, new construction over $1 million, unless it's a maintenance thing, right, actual maintenance, and otherwise, it'll be something that the board member feels strongly about for their community reasons, then we can address it case by case. So we don't need to vote on that, sir.
Okay.
I don't know if you or the board have any other items that you want. Okay.
Does any other the board members have anything additional? All right, so that concludes our work session. Now start the special session. First item, Mr. Cubic.
Recommendation of the approval of the agenda dated September 5, 2024.
Motion.
Second.
Motion by Mr. Curry, second by Ms. Bates. Is there any discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Chair votes aye.
Dr. Minsky, you have your music ready?
We couldn't pick, there were so many.
Miss O'Bannon, welcome and for our
Yes, sir.
2025 proposed budget hearing.
Yeah, it comes
First-
around quickly. Mr. Carter helped me get this set up, and so the hard copy you have in front of you you may want to flip pages, take notes, but I will send it to you electronically after tomorrow, so you'll have it. And then we'll have the booklets next week when we hopefully approve the budget with all the staffing sheets by school, so you'll have that as well. But this will look different than what you have because he worked with me and us, and he did it. So it's the template that the school system uses that's ADA compliant, so that anyone that's hearing impaired, we're live streaming. It's pretty cool. So anyway, I will get started. Unless you want to hear the story of how Plainview High School was named. It's a good story. So that's my high school. And I lived in Rainsville. Now, Mr. Cubic knows this story. But when we were talking about the new intermediate school, Rainsville and Shavees, have you ever heard of the Shavees community between Rainsville and Five? They were both about the same size. And so the construction guys, and they were all up on the whatever doing their work up high, and they said, you know what? You can see a plain view of both communities. This is a true story. It's true. Because they were debating over whether to name it Rainsville High School or Shavees High School. And now Shavees is just a crossroads in the road. So it should have been named Rainsville, but it's Plainview, and that's why. And I don't know what year that was, maybe in the, it's true, Mr. Curry. It is true. It's in the historical records in the newspapers. Wow. You can see a plain view of both communities, and they named it Plainview High School. Pretty cool, huh?
Yes, ma'am. And just for the record, you don't get stories like that from any CSFO or nothing. So.
Not many are Plainview Bears, so. Anyway, good evening. We will be going, oh, here's my clicker. I want to make sure I'm good with it. Okay, let's do this way. Okay, there we go. We will be going over the fiscal year 2025 budget that starts October 1, 2024, and runs through September 30th, 2025. It's a good budget. We have the same challenges with millage rates and things that you've heard. Mr. Jones and Mr. Byrd haven't had the privilege of hearing these as much as the others, our more not senior, but long-term board member, and even including Mr. Vess. So, I was hoping Mr. Jones was here, but anyway, we can work with him when he takes his seat. But we have the same challenges with millage rates, sales tax rates, being on the low side when we talk about the 10 mil match. But I don't want it to be all dark and there's some positive things here, and I want to bring those out and share as well. Because we live in North Alabama, in an area with rapid growth that still remains the economic engine from the state. It really does. And so that's a good thing for us, but just wish more of those funds came back to us from Montgomery. But we have seen that with our A&D supplemental funds. We've been getting millions, and this year we received more than ever this summer, 19 million, and I'll show you that because that really helps us with our capital needs. It's helped us get ahead with our school bus purchases, and freed up local money as we used it for insurance, but I'll go through that when we get to that slide. So that's helped us get where we are. Also, the ESSER funds helped us get ahead because we were able to tackle some immediate needs with learning loss with those funds, and it freed up some local monies for other things in the instruction environment, software purchases and things like that. Also, we've had years of growth in sales taxes. It's leveled out, but we're going to look at a slide there to look at the last several years. And we've had a couple of years unusually seeing growth in our property taxes. And we'll talk about that and what that cap that's coming how that might affect it. But that's how we have this reserve, where we are. And many of you remember, I know Ms. Bates and Mr. Curry and Mr. Vess, that we haven't always had the reserve that we have right now. So years ago we didn't, and not too long ago. So we want to take advantage of it while we can. We don't know what state funding is going to look like as far as supplemental funds in the future. So since so many of you are familiar with how K-12 is funded, including everyone in this room, I am going to be moving the slides rather quickly to get through them. We have some similar comparisons every year and talking points like the 10 mil match. But I will slow down when we need to focus on some of the more important points or something you want to talk about more. Just feel free to stop me and we'll ask questions. But I do appreciate, as always, the support of all departments in preparing and pulling everything together this summer. Gina Gross and I worked off and on all summer to make sure that the funding sources were correct and everything was properly allocated for both personnel and non-personnel costs, but I couldn't have done it without all the department heads and the support of the board as well. And I do appreciate how you support the decisions made with the budget, as well as how you help us monitor it through the years. And that goes for all departments as well. So, the Fiscal Accountability Act requires the budget hearings, the two. So this is the big one, and then we'll condense it a little bit or a lot next week. You're familiar with this process. I left this slide in because I just couldn't leave it out. That was from last year, and if you go by, Ms. Bass can tell you, or any one of these four, if you go to my office or Gina's office and you poke your head in, this is what you see. It's a disaster. But that's what it looks like. It's scary, but we can usually put our hand on whatever you need, and we're always happy to help you regardless of how the office looks. So this is just our madness, and it works for us. So I I wanted to share that because it's hilarious to me. Again, we receive input for every department, and starting with staffing, meeting with Mr. Cubic, his cabinet, and all the principals to determine the personnel for each school for the upcoming school year, as well as personnel costs. So we make sure that the personnel piece of the budget is entered properly and first, because it's the majority of, obviously, of the general fund budget. And this is my group. This is the A team. I've already mentioned Gina Croce, the counting supervisor, and how closely we work together. She finishes my sentences, and I finish her sentences, and sometimes we only have to say the word. We're thinking the same thing. But Jeanette Hunter, my administrative assistant and secretary, is always a great resource if you need anything from the business office or from me. And I will send you this again with the phone extensions, because we have had a few changes. So when I send everything electronically, I'll send that to you if you need to reach out to any of this team. I'm going over some items to note. I'm not sure where we are. Someone in the room can tell me. I know we're in the top 10 of the largest school systems in the state. It was 8. I don't know where we are now, but that's huge anyway. And you can see our ADM for 22 through 24. That determines our state allocation in the foundation program. The 24 count determined for this budget in 25. And we will have those fall counts soon that we capture 20 days after Labor Day. And it's my understanding that we're up a little over 100 students, which that was shocking to me because I thought it would be more, but I know more is coming, but still, and that could change as folks enroll and everything is cleared. So we have 30 schools in Madison County, 15 elementary, 6 middle, 6 high, and our 3 others on this campus, our Career Technical Center, a school, a virtual school, an alternative school, and in 2026, we'll be adding the intermediate school, so we'll have 16 elementary. This reflects the fall counts as far back as I could go. I think I showed you this before, but the significance of 1997 to 1999 is when Madison City pulled out and formed its own school system. So we've remained stable, which is a good thing as far as funding goes. We've remained stable and are hanging around 20,000 students. And again, these numbers do not include pre-K. Foundation program does not fund pre-K within that program. As always, I'll be spending most of the time on general fund type or general operations, and these are the funding sources for general fund, state and local, which we rely heavily on our state funds. 65% of our budget is from the state, with 35% from local. The Huntsville City and Madison City systems have greater local revenues, so that reduces their reliance on the state funding. And it also gives them more flexibility to add additional programs, capital, personnel, because the state funds are earmarked and pretty much for salaries and benefits or how they can be used. So let's get into the state foundation program funding. The funding factors as it relates to the foundation program. I think you all know the units earned for personnel or the certified staff at each school is based on the previous year's average daily membership, those file counts that we just talked about. The salary amounts that we receive is determined by the state matrix based on education, degree, and experience of our staff. The benefit amounts for insurance and retirement are mandated by the state, and for fiscal year 25, there's been no change. With the insurance, it's $800 a month per employee, so insurance is $9,600 per year for every employee, including bus drivers, including all support personnel. It's the same. And we'll talk about the teacher fee allocation, what that looks like in our textbook allocation in just a minute. So and also to add to the funding calculation, the teachers we earn are based on student enrollment, as I just mentioned, and the state-approved grade divisors. This did not change from last year. It's the same. So for every 14.25 students in K-3, we earn a teacher. For every 20.06 students in 4-6, we earn a teacher, and on down. So as we discuss every year, that 14.25 looks really good for those elementary grades, but I always remind you that that also has to cover those funds from the state, our PE teachers, our SPED teachers for our special needs students, our EL teachers now for our students with language barriers, those English learners. And also it has to cover our electives for middle and high school, as well as art and music in elementary schools. So in order to cover all of these needs, we've had to increase our locally funded teachers, and I'll show you that in a minute, by school. But in order to, once these are placed, there's still a lot of pockets where we need to add local units, and you'll see those in a minute. Just from looking at these divisors, what grade level is the most challenging to staff without adding local units? Not you guys. Not you, Mr. Cubitt. 4th to 6th? No, it's actually 4th through 6th grade, because our intermediate, it has higher grade divisors. So we don't earn as many units until you have 20.06. So we try to get those lowered. Mr. Evans has been instrumental in working with the state on that from year to year. And it has come down some, but it didn't this year. But that is the most difficult grade levels to staff with the state earned. So the system enrollment for FY25, you can see from last year's count was 19,876. We increased by 200 students. And you can also, we earned 1,150 teachers, state earned across the district. And you'll see in your booklets next week where those earn units are for each school by the state and what we've had to add. We earned 3 assistant principals. They made a little calculation for the assistant principal weighted calculations, how I'm going to say it. But so Newmarket got another 0.5, Madison County Ely got a 0.5, Meridianville got because of the grade configuration change with 6th grade going there, we added a 1 there, and the other was in the Monrovia area. Then the same with counselors, we earned 1 new unit, and Meridian, correct me if I'm wrong, Meridianville Middle earned a 2nd librarian. Is that correct? No. Yes. Okay. So how about the dollars that go with these, the ADM and the earned units? The benefits and salaries increase, that's for the growth, the 200 unit growth, or 200 student growth, and then the 2% raise. You can also see the CIS funds here, the classroom instructional support, student materials at $900 a unit. They received a total of 1,000 last year when we looked at the funds that came in early. But this year, they pulled out, we have not had common purchases, and it's at the bottom, $100, so that's the total of 1,000. Common purchases are pooled together by the teachers, and they can use it for, in the school, for copiers, copy paper, storage spaces for those, media items in the library, or things in the counselor's office, but for instruction. So that was the only big change there. And textbooks went up from 100 per student to, from 75 per student to 100. And look at student growth units at the bottom. Since we grew by 200 students, we receive what the state funding per student is. So those 200, it's average now of $7,000 per student for state funding for all districts. So we received $1,433,860. Last year, we grew by 568 students and received $3,898,084. But student growth funds, we received those early, and they're not in arrears to help us with the staffing needs currently in this year, only for the increase in your student population. you receive like $7,000 per student. So if we grow by 100, 150 kids this year, our student growth funds will go down, but also our student population is not, we'll have a little more room and some reprieve on the growth. So, what? They did. Well, the student growth units is brand new, the way they handle it. What it used to be was called current units. And you didn't know it when you were preparing the budget, but in the year, they would see like, oh, we've seen significant growth. Say our first year we had virtual school and the growth, and they sent it to us like in February and notified us in February. So it was called current units. That went away for, I would say, 4 or 5 years, and then last year they started with the student growth units, and that has been passed in the state law, and that should continue in the education trust budget every year because it was passed in the law. But they have done away with current units. Look at the bottom, the $146 million. That's what we earned in dollars for foundation. And again, is that what we'll receive? No. We will receive the $129 million because of the 10 mil match of 17. That requirement is now at $17.7 million. So, as the revenue increases in property taxes, so does our match requirement. Before we talk more about the 10 mil match, let's look at nurses, for example. It increased quite a bit, and they've been promising that when the matrix and all that changed. So with the $670,000, we were able to pull in the majority of our nurses for salaries and benefits, and we were able to maintain and keep the ones that were funded through ESSER. We had a floater, and we had a Hazel Green High second nurse, so we were able to keep those. We still have 7 that are funded locally, but that is very good news. The not so good news is transportation. I think they still balance the budget on the back of the transportation department at the state level, but it's still funded at about 80% of what it costs to operate. And then fleet renewal, we'll go into that in detail. It's still at $7,581 a bus for 10 years, which is a total cost of total revenues of $75,810, and that's about half the cost of a new bus. We look at this every year as well. This is all, if you'll see where we are since proration ended in 2011, we are up to that state funding, average funding per student is around $7,000, and that holds true for every school system because of the 10 mil match requirement that every school has to. It's less for the poor systems and more for the more wealthier systems. So the variances among school districts are with local funds, obviously, and federal funds, but not with state. They're equitable across the state. And remember, so overall, our ranking, if you look at all funding sources, our ranking, there's 139 school systems in the state. Our ranking is 117. They measure it every year after we close a fiscal year, and they have the data and the financial statements from all systems. So as of September 30th, 2023, we ranked overall funding 117 out of 139 school systems. So keep that in mind as we go over expenses in a bit, and we'll talk about that again. The 10 mil match, all school districts are required to contribute the value equal to 10 mils of property tax, and any amounts in excess of the 10 mils are available to the district to spend for general operations, and we're going to see what that looks like. Anything remaining that we aren't required to use in the foundation program for salaries, we use for operations. And here's the the projections, if you look at the bottom, local property taxes are projected, we'll see that slide in a minute, at 39 million this year, or for 2025, leaving 21,575 after that 17,744 comes off the top. So it keeps increasing, and quite a bit this year because property taxes did increase quite a bit in this area. And how is that calculated? The state takes our 22, 23, the most recent fiscal year in, and they take our 4 mil district tax revenues that we received, divide it by 4, and then get the value of 1 mil for Madison County, and then they take that value times 10 mills, and that's our match. So again, the match requirement increases proportionately with the revenue increases. This, just to summarize it in a nutshell, the dollars that we earned was $146 million. The state funds coming to MCBOE is $129 million after the local match. So in essence, the total foundation units earned that we saw on that first slide in the foundation program is 1,281 certified units. 90% of it is paid by the state, and then we pick up the 128 other units through the match. Then we also have, I told you our local units for teachers increased some this year because we didn't receive as many student growth units, and the needs are great that I'll describe in a moment. But so we also have 85 locally funded units when we went through staffing, and on top of the foundation program match. And this is what that looks like by school. You can see when compared to prior years, we have more teachers, primarily because of the increasing needs for students with special requirements and special accommodations in our SPED program. And we're also trying to maintain appropriate class sizes for instruction. So in the smaller schools that don't earn as many units. So that's the two main reasons. And then we have the ELL population, those teachers. Ms. Bass, we have, what, 16 now? We have 16 EL teachers. That's part of this equation, too. So that's the main reasons that we've gone from 28 local units last year for teachers to 50 this year.
Ms. O'Bannon, can I stop you for a second?
Yes, sir.
I'd like the board to note on the previous slide, the assistant principals, the 25 and a half. We have 30 schools, so that's almost one assistant principal above what we're funded by the state of Alabama. This board has always taken the position to put extra help, administrative help, out at the local schools where the students are and the staff at. And I want to commend the board, because that's, that's almost 26 units that's funded by the board to help at the local schools. I think it gets missed over sometimes that, the extra that the board is doing through, through the financial part as far as what we're trying to do to help at the local schools. So I just wanted that, make sure that you guys realize and we appreciate that very much. Because, you have a separate, guidelines for administrating counselors and assistant principals. That's a lot different than the state. Thank you, Ms. O'Bannon.
Uh-huh. Other state funds, that scared me. Jess is there. Other state funds, we won't talk about this right now, but again, the budget for transportation services, we had to plug in 1.1 million for transportation on top of the, the state allocation, because we are obviously not fully funded there. And this is what I was talking to you about. These are other state funds. We're past the foundation program. These are other state funds, and this is, we received $19.7 million this summer through A&T, the supplemental funds, and we don't never know this until the end of the legislative session, usually in the end of May. So we continue to cover our facilities insurance to free up local funds for other things. Transportation, this should get us 100% fully funded I'll show you that in a minute when we get to capital projects funds. And the remaining for McKee Road project, we'll look at that again as to how much the money is available in our capital projects fund. And so that helps us to move on to the next project. Once McKee Road, we've got to get that school named. I'm tired of calling it McKee Road. So, and Plainview's a good name. But, yeah. Anyway, that will. Then our other state funds, we continue to have our OSR, Office of School Readiness pre-K grants. So we have 17 classrooms in Title I schools on the left side, and we have 8 in non-Title I schools. And each grant this year is $114,000. Ms. Haynes has been working closely with the state, because there's a shortfall, because these funds are used for each classroom to hire a teacher and an auxiliary aide. And $114,000 just doesn't get it. So in the Title I schools, Title I can fill that gap and help cover the shortfall. We can't do it locally because it would be supplanting if we did the shortfalls in the non-title schools. So they've been able to charge tuition, and we have enough tuition at these schools, the funds remaining, to cover any shortfalls this year. The state is talking about how to better fund, how to do away with tuition, and it's all up in the air right now. So just keep that in your mind. We don't know what this will look like for 25, 26. But right now, this is what we have as far as our OSR pre-K grants. Local revenues. Let's move from state to local. We'll talk about those property taxes in a minute. The types of property you're familiar with. Class 3 property is where it generates the most revenue for us. That's our residential property, and it's assessed at 10%. Before I move any further, if there's anybody, I don't think anyone in here has not seen this chart. It needs to be tabbed and hung over your bed. But this is an important chart to tab seriously if you haven't seen it before. The total millage rates for the 3 school systems are at the bottom. And you can see I have numbered each school district so you can tell all the county and city agencies and where the millage rates have been levied to come to those totals, where they were authorized or originated. And Madison County is the top 2 countywide that the county commission levied many moons ago. That's our 16 mills. So I changed this up a little bit. I did a little reappraisal on our house and went from $100,000 to $150,000 market value, and I did not exceed the 7% cap. I promise you I didn't. So let's see what 16 mills would generate with this example. Take the fair market value times 10%. Remember the 10% assessment rate for residential property equals $15,000 times our millage rate. 16 mills generates $240 for our school system, or for our schools. The amount of tax for Madison City for this same example, they have 39 mills and it generates $585. And for the tax for Huntsville City, the 15,000 times 0.0275 is $412.50. So the differences do add up, as you'll see that slide in a minute where we compare local revenues per district. The local revenue projections for our 16 mills. So we increased the last 2 years an average of 14 to 18% in property taxes. That's the growth we were experiencing, the increase. So I took that, level funded, and added 2% more over the prior actual. But the increase was actually, for this, from 23 to 24, was $7.3 million. So that 7% cap on assessments or on reappraisals, it's for assessment increases, which is called the reappraisal. It's in effect for October 1, 2024. So it will be on 24-25 assessments collected, and the taxes will be collected in 25-26 with the cap. So there's really no impact for this fiscal year, this budget. The cap does not apply to new construction that has never been assessed, or it doesn't apply to any additions or improvements. So it will, I'm predicting, and this is just really rough idea, that it will, at least our property taxes will be half of the increase that we've been seeing. Does that make sense? So if it was 7, it would be, if it was 7.3 million, it would be 3 million. That's what I'm predicting, because it's hard to tell because of the growth with the new construction. But a 7% cap, and where we've been seeing an increase in taxes anywhere from 14 to 20%. So, but that will start for the budget year, fiscal year 26. And our sales taxes, again, they're level funded, and I'm sticking with that. It's a very conservative budget, but again, it's a good budget for sales taxes, and the same with TVA in lieu of taxes. We receive a percentage of those power sales for the tax exempt property. And that it's been around $4.5 million for the last several years. But look at this next slide. This is the half-cent for sales tax revenues. And so you can see, Carter changed up my font. Can you see that? Can you read that? Well, look on your sheet. The slide shows 6 years of revenue for the half-cent and 1 cent sales tax. The estimated, what we project that we'll receive the end of September, remember, it's 60 days in arrears, so right now we're collecting July's sales taxes. And then we estimate what August and September will look like. So you can see the large increases from fiscal year 18 all the way through 22. Then in 22 on forward, it has leveled out. But we are still maintaining, the good news is we're still maintaining the levels reached in 2022. Obviously, inflation and the current economy plays a role in this, but also SSUT plays a role in this too. It's impacting it at some point, because I have to mention those Amazon sales that we don't get a penny off of. But SSUT was passed in 2016, and the county commission back there, that first year, they received like $1 million for the whole year. They're now up to $12 million a year that they receive off the Amazon sales. And they don't share a penny with the school system. So 25% of that would be great just to leverage, and when market rates, interest rates were better, it would be great. I know that Elvis song, If I Can Dream, but that's where we are. And it does impact, because people are buying more and more and more from Amazon. I'm sure everybody in here is guilty of it. So, but remember, we don't get a penny of it. Any questions on that? These are our sales tax rates, same. That's our one for the county, our 1 cent district, and our half cent that countywide that's shared by all school systems. And the countywide taxes that we just talked about, the 5.5 mills and the half-cent sales tax, those are allocated and distributed to the 3 school systems based on our ADM file counts that were funded with foundation. So the countywide share taxes with the other, okay, I just said that. Huntsville City receives about 45% of the countywide taxes. Madison County around 38%, and Madison City around 17%. That's not on your slide, but it's just good to note. So any county-wide shared taxes with the other two school systems, that's the percentages. So finally, here is local. We have, this is updated for September 30, 2023. And you can see Huntsville City operates more than double the revenues, local revenues. And the difference in local funding per student for Madison City, district revenues are close to the same locally, and they have about 7,500 fewer students. Let's take a quick look at general fund expenditures, and we'll move on to federal programs. We're projecting $40 million that we will end fiscal year '24, and that's about 2 months operating reserve and some change. We're averaging 19.4 million a month in expenditures in operations. So, also notice on this slide the percentages again for each category. Instructional support, 68.6% of the budget. And remember, except for the categories for transfers to CMP and the debt transfers to pay our debt over in the debt service funds, every one of those categories have the personnel costs also included for instructional support. You know, admin is this team up here, and then preschool salaries and all the way down. So it boils down to, or comes down to, the operating budget is representative of salaries and benefits at 77% of the budget. It usually runs anywhere 77 to 83, but with the additional maintenance items in our capital plan, it has brought the percentages down a little bit to 77%. This is just a freebie, no real changes here with the benefits. So federal programs. The ESSER funds expire at the end of this month, so we won't have any here or moving forward. These are our main, our allocation for federal programs, with the major ones at the top being IDEA B for special education, and then Title I. I'll show you CMP in just a moment. We haven't yet received our federal allocation for Title III, which is our EL student program, but the $50,000 doesn't go very far with that. So the majority of that program and education of our EL students is from state and local funds. The good news is, we're holding our own there. Don't really see, it's pretty much level funded from the federal government. So IDEA B, 4.6 million is the allocation. This is for our special needs students. And the federal money is primarily used for salaries and contracted services, as you can see here. We'll look at the total number of aides on the next slide, but 79 are funded here from federal dollars. And notice at the bottom, this is a very important slide. This is state and local expenditures that that are required to support our SPED population. And we're up to 25 million this year. We just added a unit at Madison County Elementary in our self-contained classroom because of the needs there. So the maintenance of effort, I know you've heard me talk about it, but it is federal law under the Individuals with Disabilities Education Act, which is IDEA B. And this is what it says: in order to continue to receive IDEA B federal money, the school system must spend at least the same amount from local and state dollars for the education of these children as was spent the year before. So we set that threshold and that benchmark. So what is it for next year? At least 25 million. This is measured and reported every time we submit a budget to the state and every time we submit a financial statement to see if we are meeting that. And obviously, we are meeting that. One exception is if our child count for our kids with special needs went down, we could possibly file for a waiver or an exception. But otherwise, that's our benchmark as it stands today. We have students coming in and out from other from other states and other districts with unique needs. Many are severe needs. And so we're adding more aides in the classroom, as you can see here, to assist with those needs. We've added 10 McBow aides and 9 Kelly aides for this school year, and we have a total of 168 aides, with over half locally funded. But as I said, at the board meeting at Hazel Green High, these costs are non-negotiable, meaning there's no options other than to add the support in the classrooms. So the SPED cost and needs are definitely a top priority. We also have 12 developmental pre-K classrooms. We've added 3 aides in that area this school year, and 18 of those are locally funded. Title I district allocation is $3.1 million, and you can see the list of our 9 Title I schools. They're ranked, poverty ranking from highest to lowest. Remember, the poverty percentage is based on the eligibility criteria from the number of approved free and reduced price meal applications that we have in the child nutrition program. The Title I funds in the schools are primarily used for people, which is great, personnel, teachers to reduce class sizes, interventionists, coaches, math coaches, reading coaches, aides, tutoring, and then we have some professional development, parent involvement in materials and supplies.
What's the percentage cutoff for Title I?
Will you explain that?
Yes, so, to be eligible for Title I, they have to be above the poverty percentage of the District 1. They must be served if it's greater than 75%. They may be served if it's greater than 45%. But you cannot serve more schools than what you can provide, what the federal government refers to as a viable program. And they define that by the ability to hire at least 1 full-time employee. So that's about $100,000 minimum. So we cannot continue to add schools that would diminish any program below $100,000. So when we knew that McKee Road was being built, it's most likely going to be a Title I school. That threshold has changed, and right now we're looking at 52% and higher. Truly 50% and higher is where we're serving. And it can be adjusted annually as a decision is made. The challenge is that with everything with the federal government, you are not 100% guaranteed those funds until they pass a budget. And it's been an omnibus for the last, I don't know, I've been doing this 7 years, and I think that's where we're at with it. Where they just do like a continuing resolution as opposed to a newly funded budget. So we've been able to count on level funding. Were that to change, it could obviously change the number of schools that we would be able to serve. Does that make sense?
It does. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Bass. Our last major program is our child nutrition program, and we would start the fiscal year with a $3 million beginning fund balance on October 1. We're also required to maintain a 1-month reserve, which CMP is approximately at $1.3 million to operate for 1 month. They allow us to carry over up to 3 months in reserves, particularly when setting aside funds to equip new cafeterias like we will have in a couple years. So We're trying to build it somewhat. We'll carry over a little bit more than 2 months. But the big change here is we will be transferring more from general fund to for salaries and benefits. So that's moving to 3.4 million. And then we talked about the equipment cost earlier, last board meeting. So that 210,000, that's not a lot of money, but it's been mandated that all air fryers are replaced with combi ovens, which combi ovens will do everything and anything, but they're very expensive. So you can see the schools that still need them that we will be purchasing this year. Our meals per labor hour are doing well for the most part. These are the average. The grade configuration changes at Lynn Fanning and Moore's Mill cause them to take a dip some. And it will take a little time to adjust staffing at these schools for optimum efficiency. It will just take some time. The state standard is 16 meals per labor hour to balance labor cost and all costs with a profit, if you want to call it a profit, to keep the program viable. So also notice at the bottom, participation is back up to where it was prior to COVID. So it was 68 point something last year, and it's holding its own. We're at 76%. And talking about the poverty, when Ms. Bass was referring to our school district, since we've had so much conversation about this lately, I wanted to finish the story. And so I added this slide to discuss CEP, the community eligibility provision, where all students are provided meals at no charge in a school system. The 31 school systems you see here are not participating in the program at this time. And the perception, and I get to hear it a lot on social media in the community, is that 80% of school districts in the state participate in the CEP program, but Madison County has chosen not to. And that is a true statement. That is a true statement. But it doesn't tell the full story. It conveys a negative message, and I think it reflects poorly on the school district, because when in fact the decision we've made in Madison County is in line with all other districts in the state with similar poverty percentages, as you can see. It's in line with every district. And Madison County's poverty percentage is 42.37%, as we are one of the more affluent districts in the state. And there's only one county, Shelby County, that has a lower poverty percentage at 36.81. And then on the other hand, the 80% that participate, I mean, we have some really poor rural areas, have an average poverty percentage of 71.12%. So that's the average of those that are participating. And to even bring up the other thing, the double-edged sword, to add to our dilemma, we're ranked, even though we're in a wealthier community with a lower poverty percentage, overall school system funding is 117 out of 139. So it's kind of a double-edged sword. I just want to make sure I took all the data from all the systems to see exactly where we were and if we were on the right track. And I'm not saying it's the right track. We would love to see every child have free meals, but we are serving nutritious hot meals for all kiddos. And those that are qualified for free receive that. But we just have some challenges with our funding, and I've mentioned a lot of them. I'll summarize it here. But our capital needs for overcrowding. Our SROs are costing, which this is our goal, this is the board's goal, $105,000 a month. So that's 1.2 for the year. That doesn't include the deputies that are doing the cross-guard duties. The cost, as you saw, increases from year to year with SPED, and the instructional programs, including summer school, has to be covered. And one thing I wanted to bring out, greatest need that we have, I think, and I think everybody in this room, what few we have in this room left, agree with, is taking care of our personnel. We have so much competition here with Madison City and Huntsville City because they're able to pay more, and it would be great if we could do more as we could. I know we have to prioritize everything with that one piece of pie that we have, or that one pie that we have, but to do more and to take care of our staff, because without the proper staff, our kids suffer. And so I just wanted to make sure everybody understood we're in line with other systems in the decision that we've made. Debt service funds, quickly, this is our debt payment for the year, $12.1 million, and I messed this one up, so this is not correct. This, where it's 10.2, I left out the Snyder financing arrangements. That should be 11.6, all the way down to 20, 32, 33. I'll correct that. But after that, some of our debt falls off, it's paid off, some of our bonds and warrants, and again, if we see, as we're getting closer to working toward a middle school at Hazel Green, it's a possibility with the funds available that we could go to the bond market. And because we will have some, and we can structure our debt such that it still remains around $12 million a year, because that's doable for us. These are our local school board-approved bank loans. The recent one we had was New Hope High School. They paid off the $400,000 loan, had a balance of $77,000, so it left them about $153,000 for those upgrades that the board approved for them to do. Capital projects funds, this is 2 slides, and I think these are important to see where we are with our money that's available right now. Earlier, we saw the fleet renewal allocation, and that, you know, it's still $75,810 per bus. We have 233 buses now. We had to add a few bus routes and staffing this year to take care of the growth. 1 mini bus and, Gina, was it 2 or 3 regular buses? Anyway, so we're up to 233 buses, 200 regular route, 33 special needs. So buses eligible for fleet renewal, if you take we have 197 buses that are funded with this whopping $75,810, which is better than nothing. And then we have not funded for 36, but guess what? We're ordering those 34 buses from the A&T funds, and so that means every bus will qualify when those come in. It's taken 18 months to get those buses manufactured and built and inspected and everything, but so 100% of our fleet will qualify for that $75,000, which is a good thing, but there's a shortfall because the bus for regular 72 passengers, $133,000, and special needs, $137,000. But still, we will be fully funded as the state hopefully will raise that at some point. The capital plan, this is the funded projects on our capital plan, and if you'll look at the $50,000 for the McKee Road School, that represents the construction cost of $43.8, the bid price, 6% or approximately $3 million for architect and engineering cost, and then another 6% for equipping and furnishing the school with IT, infrastructure, furniture. You don't think about all that when you open a school. Library books, PE equipment, I mean everything, a lawnmower, a tractor, I mean, everything comes into play. So then the next largest project that we have is the 12 that we've approved is the 12 classroom addition. And with the A&E funds, I know Mr. Kubik has reached out for our Lieutenant Governor's grant to apply to this project, but with A&E and with furnishing those classrooms, it'll be around $11 million. So that's the estimated budget for construction. And I went ahead and put the building on here on the slide for Career Tech. I know it's showing it's unfunded right now, but we do have the funds set aside if everything goes through with that. So these are our funds available currently as we stand today. So we've got cash and investments in our capital projects funds, and then $15 million that we'll be transferring in, I said this summer, we're transferring it in September. Then our state, A&T state funds that you just saw, the $13.8 million. So we have a total of $96 million. With that, we can cover the McKee Road, the Hazel Green High addition, and the building purchase, which is about $68.6 million, leaving a balance of $27.8 or close to $30 million for the next major unfunded project. So, which would be Hazel Green Middle School. And again, Mr. Kubik had a meeting last week, and they were optimistic that we might receive A&T funds one more time. So I don't know if it's going to be $9 million, $19 million. We don't have any idea, but we could put that, a portion of that, since our buses are caught up, a portion of that, whatever we might not need for deferred maintenance or other needs, toward the next project. And then but this is where we are as of today, and we're doing very well with our investments right now. I know interest rates are coming down, but we're trying to lock in our treasuries for at least a year. Then our last local school booster clubs, that's their revenue, and it's mostly the high schools that have the revenues for booster clubs. So that's it. I will send you the PowerPoint electronically and clean up some of it, and you'll have your staffing sheets next week. Any questions?
On the booster clubs, do we have like rules and procedures they're supposed to follow?
Yes, sir. We have guidelines on the website. Yes, sir. Mm-hmm. And it also applies to PTAs and PTOs in that same document.
Okay, thank you.
Anything else? I appreciate your time. I know it's 7 o'clock.
Thank you, Ms. O'Bannon.
Thank you. Excuse me? Well, I do appreciate your time, and I do appreciate your support every year.
Thank you, Ms. O'Bannon.
I can get all my papers.
All right, next agenda item, administrative items. Mr. Kubik.
Yes, I recommend approval of the contracts for services as submitted.
Motion.
Motion by Ms. Bates, second by Mr. Byrd for the recommendation of approval of contract for services. Is there any discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Chair votes aye. Mr. Curry has abstained.
I recommend approval of the personnel items as submitted.
Motion.
Motion by Ms. Bates, second by Mr. Byrd for the recommendation for approval of personnel items. Any discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Chair votes aye. Mr. Curry has abstained.
I recommend approval of the supplemental contracts as submitted.
Motion.
Motion by Ms. Bates, second by Mr. Byrd for the recommendation for approval of the supplemental contracts. Any discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Chair votes aye. Mr. Curry is abstaining. All right, that concludes our agenda items for this evening. However, we do have the need for an executive session, and I'm going to turn it over to our legal counsel, Ms. Thompson.
Mr. Jones, I've asked for an executive session for legal matters. The category chosen is imminently likely litigation if the board chooses to pursue the
do I have a motion?
Motion.
Motion and a second. We are now in executive session.
Aye.
Any discussion? All in favor?
Aye.